G'day, welcome to another Fix It Friday with Sam Martin from Refuse Revival. What we're working on today is we're converting this old fuel tank into a wicking bed as a kitchen garden bed for just outside my back door, which leads into the kitchen. I just want to be very clear that this tank was bought around about 10 years ago from a clearing sale. And for about 5 years it stored vegetable oil when I was running my old truck on a veggie oil setup. And then it's been full of water and it's been used as a firefighting tank. And now it's got leaks. So it's kind of useless as a tank and it's time to convert it into something else. Cool. Hope you enjoy the video. Well, we might do a bit of a test here. What we'll do is we'll cut this side mostly with that, which is the jigsaw. Now I'll have a crack at the other side with an angle grinder and we'll see which is the better option for cracking this steel. My gut feeling is the jigsaw. It's a bit slower, but it's easier to control. So, however, we'll have a crack there and then you can make up your minds on which way you go with it. Managed to release the top of the tank from this baffle. And what I'm thinking is if I just get a little bit of action going this way, metal hurts. There's one gone. Two. Oh, it's really thick steel. It's going to be great as a garden bed. It's looking like it's around about 4 mil thick. So I have the baffle plates out. I've got to say that was a really hard job to do, but there, like all this stuff, you think this is going to end up in the scrap metal pile. That's actually where it came from. That's great steel plating for me to do whatever later on with, and it's actually not that rusty. This, on the other hand, the bottom of the tank is absolutely pitted, rusty, so I've cut out the baffle plates. I've ground them back so that it's nice and flush because I don't want to sit my plastic liner on anything too sharp, especially down the sides here. And so I'm just considering what I'm going to do now. I'm thinking that what I might do is grab some old polystyrene boxes and actually line this entire thing with a polystyrene box before putting my plastic in. Now that's going to do two things. One thing is that it's going to make it a nice soft surface for the plastic liner to fall on. And the other great thing it's going to do is insulate this metal, because I am going to be planting this on the southern side of my house, which will not get as much sunlight as you'd hope. And I think that anything I can do to keep the soil at a reasonable temperature, I will. So that's it, polystyrene. I've got to find some polystyrene. Surely someone's got some of that lying around. You can see here that I have successfully managed to line where the waterbed for my garden's going to be. So I'm going to now just cut up some black plastic, line the inside of this, then I'll fill that waterbed with rocks, throw a bit of something over the top of that, and we'll have a garden bed in no time. It's pretty exciting. What I've done here is I've cut the liner, and I've been really careful with this one. Make sure that it didn't have any sharp bits underneath it as I cut it, and I've actually folded it into the sort of internal dimensions of the wicking bed. Now I'm just going to push it down in there, and I'm going to just get it really nicely kind of held in place before I look at installing that outlet. Also just going to double check that I haven't got anything sharp in the bottom of here, as I've been cutting with metal and all that sort of stuff, and it just wouldn't take much to damage this. You know, you do the old measure once and cut it twice versus measure twice and cut it once. Love these little fingers. There they are. Clip. Super windy day here in Candelo. It's just awesome for working with plastic. working on the outlet now. Mark that hole with a red paint marker, and my intention now is just to use a sharp centre punch and push through. Just put a little piece of poly pipe in here now with an old fitting, and time to fill it up. Let's see how it retains water. I hope it does. You'll see that I have successfully managed to seal this by putting some tape and been really careful with my plastic liner at that outlet point. Got a new inlet going in, and I found this in the scrap metal pile. So we'll put that in there, which will hold the hose, and I'll also have a lid that I can put on this, which will mean that it'll keep any mozzies or anything like that out. I've got a piece of poly pipe that was dug up by the dozer the other day, so I'm going to throw that in here, and it'll all fall down into this old piece of plumbing from a laundry sink, and that'll send all the water down to the bottom directly through the bed. We're on a bit of a Datsun mission now. So we need to get some aggregate for the bottom of the rocks, and I noticed the other day when the girls and I were down at the creek that after they'd fixed the road, they dumped a load of quite fine aggregate over the edge of the bridge. So that's refuse as far as I'm concerned, and we're going to go and pick it up. Am I about there? A bit further? Well, that's a good start to our afternoon, isn't it? Ah. That'll do. I guess so. So I got Sophie on board as my camera operator today, which is pretty exciting because I'm usually doing that stuff myself. This is what I found here the other day when we came for a walk down by the creek. And I just imagine that they've swept it up and gone, we've got too much, and so we'll just tip it over the edge. It's quite fine. But this is what I'm intending to use as aggregate at the bottom of my thing. So the water will fill up in this layer. Be really interesting to see how it works. It may be too fine. I might try and get some river stone to go with it. All right, time to shovel. I love shoveling. Just love it. That was good. It's nice to do some physical exercise on a Sunday. So I think we've got about, I don't know, half a cubic metre of aggregate, and we'll just see if we can find some bigger rocks to add with it and go home and put it in the wicking bed. There's always good refuse around bridges. They slow things down like you wouldn't believe. And what I noticed was that there's a substantial length of poly pipe tangled up in here. This will be like going to the hardware shop for me when I need it. I don't think I'll go for it today. The Datsun might get bogged. Actually, the Datsun's probably going to get bogged where we've ended up anyway. But around the corner here, you can see, oh, it's pretty stuck. Oh, that's a job for another day. There's quite a lot of it. I think I'll have to pull it out with the Land Cruiser. Well, that's good redline polypipe right there. $2 a metre. Candelo Market. See you next month or year. All right, I need those buckets, buddies. Yeah, can I have the other one then?
Okay, yeah. I was just getting it.
There's a creek here. Just walking back towards the car with my treasure trove of rocks. Found this one. Apollo golf balls. I think that a turtle will probably appreciate me picking that up right now. So, there we go. Take a few rocks and any waste I find. Loaded up the aggregate in one little container of rocks, and I did think that maybe there was a pretty much a 75% chance that the Datsun would get bogged, but it was the most convenient vehicle to take at the time because it's essentially a wheelbarrow with a motor. So let's see how we go getting out. Fortunately, I came prepared with a task force of pushers. All right, here we go. You ready, girls? Just watch me, and I'll come and get you if I need you to push me. Woo! We just had a successful mission picking up some aggregate, and now we're going to go home, check the wicking bed's not leaking, add the rock layer, and then add compost and our topsoil and do some planting this afternoon. What do you reckon, girls? Sound like fun?
I didn't even know we were making a wicking bed.
Oh, you'll have to watch it on YouTube next week. Ensure that everything's level, or as level as can be, and you'll get a really neat finish here. All right, we're gonna back the Datsun in, load this up with the aggregate and rocks, cover it with hessian, put compost in, and plant out. So I'm just layering in some of the slightly bigger rocks down here at the bottom where the outlet is of the inlet. Basically, so that it's really easy for water to flow and fill the bed quickly. Sometimes, especially when you're using like a fine aggregate like I've got, you'll find that the bed can actually fill and not drain properly, which is a bit of a risk, and Mum actually recently had an issue with that when we built one and used an aggregate sand that was just too fine, and it actually clogged up her outlet, which meant that the poor old plant just died because it got full of water and couldn't drain. So drainage is really important, as is retaining a little bit of moisture. I've got the aggregate sitting in there, just heading down to get the hessian and found this on the way. I think this is going to work even better, so I'm going to throw it in now. So this is all going really well. I've got a piece of shea cloth sitting in there, which is going to be my fabric layer between the rocks, and it's going to hold the compost up. And I'm going to fill the bed up now. I just thought I'd check the depth, and look at that, 300, which is exactly what we want. 300 mil of topsoil and compost, and then there's about 200 mil of water and rocks. Time to fill it up. The compost has been going for about a month now, which is really exciting, and it's done. So what I'm going to do is, we've got the layers of leaves here that were set on top to help retain some of that moisture. I'm actually going to put them into my next compost bed, which is just here, and they're going to start the next load of little compost that I'm doing there, mixed with kitchen scraps and leaves that are in there, and compost flies, etc. So that'll be the next layer. I'm going to get to the bottom of this and put it in my wicking bed. I think that I didn't have quite enough air in the system here. We've got great worm life and microbial activity, I guess, but it's just a little bit too damp for me. So I think more air, and that would have actually ended up a bit fluffier. So this is what I'm going to do. Add just a little bit of this stuff. Once again, I might end up with a few weeds doing it this way, but in a bed that size, it's just not hard to pick them. Won't even have to put my shoes on to come and pick the herbs. How good's that? Thanks very much for tuning in to another episode of Refuse Revival. Here we've built a fuel tank feeder. A couple of points to note. One is that if you're building something like this, a garden bed is a very heavy thing, so make sure you've got a solid foundation, which I do. And also, if you're using fuel tanks, be really, really careful and do your research and homework around how to cut them up. That's not for me to tell you. This is just general in nature. This is an old tank that had been rusted out and sitting for a long time. It's full. I'll be planting it out in the next week or so. Just let the ground settle a bit before we get into planting. And I look forward to sharing it with you later on. See you next time.